Yeah, I've been covering games for about 22 years, and I also host the GamesBeat conference that happens about once a year now. Next one will be in the spring of 2019. And very happy to be hosting this chat with Timo. Timo, do you want to tell us more about your background as well?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Timo. I'm the CEO, one of the co-founders of Small Giant Games. I'm one of the dinosaurs of the games business. I suppose we've been doing these kind of things for almost 20 years now. So I was the CEO of Habbo Hotel. Some of you may remember that thingy from the past. So we did that for a long time. And actually the core team of Small Giant is really the core team of some of the core members of Habbo. So, and we founded the company about 5 years ago, but really got going about 4 years ago, and did two casual games first. Tried to sort of change that market a little bit, but literally failed. I mean, we were pretty close to success, but we decided to kill those products very quickly, and then start looking for the big one. That how could we really get to top 100 grossing, the top 50 grossing, and what does it take? And it's funny to say that, but after a year and a half, we actually did it. So it's great to be here.
So just curious how you approached starting this new mobile game company in 2013, which was still, just a time when everybody thought the market was sort of over and way too crowded, I guess.
Yeah, so there was when we founded the company, market was already, super full of games, and it was starting getting really difficult for small studios to break through. But we had a strong belief in our sort of a super talented core team, and we also felt that, hence the name Small Giant, that really small, motivated teams with right tools can actually do gigantic things, and that was like our sort of a pretty sort of naive belief, but we were quite serious about that, and we managed to get a little bit early funding to get us going, and then a couple of years back we changed the course completely from casual games to mid-core to go after the deep monetization of the games. But I think the fact that we had such a long experience, most of us, that we had done a lot of social gaming. We were one of the pioneers of free-to-play back in the day. And how to build communities that help us, to understand how critical those are for the long-term success of a game, so that a game that would last for years.
So in February, you raised $41 million, and that sounded like a lot of money until we heard about Voodoo, I guess, just yesterday. And
it's still a lot of money.
rumored to have raised $200 million, right? But a lot of game studios, they may raise $2 million or so. So I wonder, with 41 million, like, why do you think you had such a big delta?
So let me give you some background. So when we built Empires and Puzzles, we started development in 2016. We were literally just 12 people, including me, and obviously didn't contribute that much to the actual game development. But we created this pretty big game in literally 11 months with 12 people. Which was I think it's some sort of world record, because it is a pretty big game. And basically we are currently, big by our standards. We're 35 people based in Helsinki. And the reason why we were able to do this big funding round is that we had a tremendous success. Last year, we launched the game about 14 months ago, almost exactly. And the first 10 months, we did $33 million in revenue, turned profitable. So we really didn't need that much money in the first place. But we've then further accelerated to $130 million run rate for this year, maybe even beyond. So it's quite an amazing story. We have now 15 million downloads. We have 1.1 million daily active users, very high engagement, very high retention and monetization rates in the game. So it's like all the mathematics underneath work super well. And then coming back to the financing route, so we were really, in a way, fortunate position that our investors saying that, hey, look, guys, we had offers on the table from potential buyers and all that stuff, but we literally raised a round. It was a big secondary round, so everyone in the Small Giant team was allowed to sell a little bit of their shares at that point. So we were, in a way, de-risking, our position, so that we can now focus fully on building something even bigger and greater going forward. So that was the primary reason. But secondary also that we're in the business of performance marketing, so we have very data-oriented company that we understand our cohort lifetime value estimations, and the payback times for those acquired users, and it requires a lot of money. And last year we raised $6 million round just to get us, to do the initial marketing thing, and that has really worked well. But it's good to have a war chest of to be able to spend a little bit more on user acquisition, but also launch new games.
And how much did you spend on that performance marketing in the last year?
Yeah, so just to give you a ballpark number, so this year, I mean, considering that we're still a very small company, 30 plus guys, and this year we'll be spending probably $80 million in marketing. So it's a big amount of money for a small team.
So if somebody wants to beat you in mobile games, they have to come up with a good game and have $80 million as well.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, they have to understand the analytics and the dark arts of performance marketing, which is a very important aspect of the whole equation.
Now, as far as like the investment you guys made, though, and what sets you apart, I guess this part about the analytics is actually important.
Yeah, so I think because I've been doing a lot of things. I've been advising a couple other games companies in the past as well. But I think, let's say, the most games companies on the planet are really good in three things. So first one is obviously game design, actual game development and the technology related to that, and then the creative design or the arts side of things. Most game companies are really focused on that. I think that's it. But the really problem is that in today's world, that if you don't deeply understand analytics, you have no chance to survive long term. So we decided that we built even our own analytics systems from the ground up because we felt that it's such an important part of our life that it's the pumping heart that we really need to understand. So that's one area that most games companies don't really understand. And the second thing,
most companies will argue that they don't need to, right? And that they could use all of the other analytics solutions that are out there.
Yeah, that's a good point because obviously, I mean, you can get going with some external tools, but it's more important is to understand what the numbers and how the model works. But then the other part, which is related to understanding analytics and how you're going to use them, is that how do you do performance marketing profitably? Meaning that when you put a $1 in, you get $1.20 or more back. And basically just learning that whole conversion funnel optimization from to create a conversion to App Store conversions to icon optimization and then so forth. And it's just basically doing that in a very systematic testing way. That's like, if you can't do that today, I mean, chances are that you're not going to survive. And then the other aspect of that, and what I've seen in many games companies, that how to do business modeling, how you actually create a business model that put the mathematics in place that you are able to execute on that. And then it comes to the financing part that, how do you get enough money to execute that financing model, that business model that you've actually done. And then you have to add, live operations, which is critical especially in the mid-core games, that you keep the game fresh every day, every week. And then last but not least, community support, community nurturing, customer sort of support. So basically, in a way, I would say that it's all about mastering the full stack of the company, if you like. So you have to tick all of those boxes if you really want to get to places where we are at the moment. It's possible. It's pretty hard.
So we just had that long talk about hyper-casual here, but tell us more about Empires and Puzzles and how that has nothing to do with that, I guess.
Yeah, so basically Empires and Puzzles is something what we called, it's a mid-core, it's essentially a very approachable mid-core RPG game. So we had this big insight and notion that they're very easy to approach casual games and sort of very deep mid-core games are starting to converge because we have literally hundreds of millions of very advanced casual players who would like to go a little bit deeper, and at the same time we've had a lot of very successful mid-core games which are incredibly difficult to play and very difficult to understand for a newbie coming to those games. And we figured out, hang on a minute, could we bridge these two worlds to create a game that would actually be the first RPG men and women also could play. So and that's how the game sort of positioning-wise came to be. But then our guys came up with a brilliant idea as part of our game jam sessions. That how about for some reason no one had really combined sort of a very clever using the match tree mechanic with a twist like sending army troopers instead of popping jellies. and then basically combining that to a base building component, and then adding, obviously the hero collection and sort of, training of those. Plus then adding, PvP, PvE, alliance wars, everything. It was like a big blender. You just keep adding a lot of ingredients and you press the button and put it together, and then out comes a good game. Of course, there's a horrible risk that when you press that blender button that something really, really bad comes out of that. It tastes really bad. But our guys did a really, really good job in sort of mastering the UI and the onboarding, and as a result of rigorous testing.
So what did you sort of notice as far as like where the early pickup was, and then just how the audience for the game really picked up?
Yeah, so the early days were really interesting because with our first game we spent way too long thinking about the game internally. That we had a bar like this high in terms of graphics, and which is at the end of it doesn't really matter at all. And we basically, with Empires and Puzzles, we went to the first live test just after 2 weeks of development. We had a really crappy version of the game. We borrowed some graphics from other games and just put the really sort of crappy version together, and went to in front of video test players. And a lot of players, typically they are paid to play 15 minutes. And so, sometimes after 10 minutes, they ask you that, do I really have to play this piece of crap? But in the case of Empires and Puzzles, we literally had all of the key game modules already there, with just some borrowed graphics. And what happened is that almost all of the players started playing not just 15 minutes, but 30 minutes, and up to 40 minutes of that really, really not so nice looking game. But they said, hang on, hey, there's some really cool components. Oh, I haven't seen, there's base building too. And that gave us almost like a really good sort of initial confidence. Hey, there's something really interesting brewing here. And then we started really systematic testing. Like every single week we did a test data build with consumers, and we plugged in our analytics, and we started, we went live literally 3.5, 4 months after development, and starting getting, real data. And the really unthinkable happened is that every time we saw there was a problem and we fixed it, every time the numbers went up. And so by the time we were launching, we knew that we had a really good game, in terms of retention, in terms of monetization, but we didn't know how to market that. That was the most difficult part for us to get, the marketing part right, the right creatives and that kind of stuff.
So you kind of, well, actually, how did your experience with Silake and Habbo Hotel affect your strategy for the new startup? Like, what did you learn from it? Yeah,
I suppose, they're like two things. Obviously, back in the day, things were very different. It was just days before the app stores and the Google Play. But I think we learned most of the things that we learned, how not to do things. So how to scale a company without creating middleman layers and making it slow. So we've had this in Small Giant we have this notion of ultra efficiency in everything that we do, and this is one of the key learnings from the early days, because we were growing like hyper growth, and it was more important to hire people than really understand what we're doing, and decision making became slow, and not even the right decisions got made. And we decided that let's avoid all of that, making sure that we keep the team sizes to an absolute minimum, because it's really not the cost issue. That can be an issue as well, but it's mostly that the so-called communication overhead kills companies. So the more people you have, more conversations. But if you have a really sort of focused team of 5 to 6 guys, and everyone knows what they're doing, then they can iterate incredibly quickly, and that's what we did.
And then I guess you started this sort of like in the shadow of Supercell and their $10 billion valuation, and I kind of wonder how as a one-game company can you challenge some of these bigger mobile game companies, especially when they can look at your $80 million and spend many times that in performance marketing.
Luckily, it's not that simple for anyone in today's world. But so let's say, give you some couple of backgrounds. So we've done pretty incredible sort of a race on the chart. So we've actually challenged a lot of the big boys. So we've now reached top 1 grossing positions in 24 markets around the globe. We've been, like in Russia, we've been #1 many times in grossing. So the best game in the freaking planet. So it's like, what happened? We've been in top 10 now in 77 markets. We've been in top 100 in 124 markets. So we've actually challenged all of the big boys. We've taken the positions there, and I think it's all about focusing and really understanding the funnel and being efficient. But obviously Supercell in our country has been a tremendous role model, and it's a very close community. We know a lot of the games, so we're getting a lot of help and inspiring help from the guys. So it's a pretty friendly community as well. And
why did you favor like doing original games over brands that belong to some other company?
Yeah, that was a very easy decision for us. So basically, there are a couple of things. First is that working with a third-party IP will slow you down tremendously. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast that you have all kinds of approval systems, and you have to have conversations with the IP holders and all that stuff. And basically, at sometimes you are at the mercy of someone's approval on things, even they may not understand anything about games. So slowing down was a very important part. Second part, of course, is that the revenue share mechanics related to that makes automatically make that if you grow big, you're going to have to give a lot of your profit away to someone else, and I don't think that equation really works. And the third aspect is that ultimately, that if you have a team that's capable of creating your IP, the companies that are successful in doing that are significantly more valuable than the ones that are just utilizing someone's third-party IP, are at the mercy of others, if you like. And maybe the last point is that there's been a lot of discussion about how the big IP will help you, will sort of cut your user acquisition cost down dramatically. I think there's a little bit of truth on that, but I think it's easy to fool yourself, because if you really know performance marketing and if you are able to master the channels and the whole package, the difference is definitely not worth the package, in our opinion.
So what are some of your future plans?
Yeah, so for future, so we obviously, Empires and Puzzles, it's kind of funny. We honestly feel that we've only scratched the surface. So we have extremely strong roadmap for the game. So we're launching something called Season 2 with a new saga map and a lot of new heroes, a lot of new game modes very soon. We have weekly and monthly sort of events happening all the time. We haven't launched in big markets of Asia at all yet, so there's a lot of things to do with that game, and we think that it has a long future and prosperous future ahead for that game. But we've also started to work on a game number 2, if you like. So the new game in the works as well. Hopefully, go live that relatively soon, and then and basically. That's really is the main.
Do you think you'd have to do something different with it in Asia, or that it would just work in Asia?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's why we've been very, very slow, because if China, Japan, Korea, they are really, really big, lucrative markets, but almost none of the Western developers have really succeeded there. But you can spend millions of dollars and all of your energy and time and sort of customizing something that may or may not be to be done in the first place. So we're going to take a very cautious and sort of a gradual approach to that and see how things unfold. But it's super difficult, and rather we've been always really focused on what is the most impactful things that we should do today and this week, and we never sort of skewed away from that. And although China is, for example, super lucrative and opportune, but it will. For a small team, it's always a zero-sum game. That if you start working on China, that means your roadmap, the one thing that you can control 100% yourself, your roadmap delivery will be hurt, and so that's how we think about things.
So, what's your view of the mobile gaming market in the future? Like, what predictions would you make about it?
Yeah, I think we see, obviously the market is growing still tremendously, and I think, the big shift is, at least from our point of view, is that, we are seeing that the casual game is getting much more of the meta and the depth and the social features of the mid-core, so that the games are becoming, rather than just game snippets, very short-term games, they are becoming more of like hobbies for people. This is a clear trend, and we're sort of banking on that as well. So I mean, all of our games have that sort of structurally very deep, but and also still be very easily approachable. So we're very keenly looking at a lot of the casual games, making sure that our onboarding systems and everything are as easy as possible, but we still have to have the deep metas and the structures.
And if you look around you, like what do you think of other emerging platforms in games as well?
Yeah, so as the VR wars have not been fought yet, i.e. there are no really, no one really knows what are the prevailing platforms. We are not interested in VR at all. I mean, that's not our core competence, and maybe sometime in the future we will think about, but right now it's completely off the map. AR shows some promise. But I suppose the challenge is now after Pokemon Go, who sort of wiped the table, and really dominates that place, is that there's going to be so many copycats, and my fear is that that model was really perfect for Pokemon, and I think if the new games that are sort of mimicking that almost to the point, I think it's going to be a very hard time. But it's going to be super interesting to see what are the new, let's say, use cases or new sort of gameplay modes that really take AR to a new place. And
I kind of thought that the Google Maps API looked very interesting, like just instantly create a location game. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm more thinking about sort of game concept. That what is it that you do with AR? And sort of I think like Bernard was talking earlier this morning. It's it's been more like a lot of the games are using AR as a bit of a gimmick, so technology gimmick at the moment. I think, but what really takes that to a new place. But I think from a volume perspective, it's very clear that for the next two years, more traditional games are dominating. Clearly, it's
obviously on your game you've mentioned the base building aspect and how you obviously your plan is for the game to last a long time. So how you go about testing to make sure that it's taking the right amount of time for users to get from start to end compared to premium spending users? Is it bot testing, or are you using external companies to sort of plop players in at certain levels you'd expect them to be? I'm just wondering how you go about that.
Yeah, I don't know all of the details. I'm not one of the core developers, but we have our own testing systems that we are able to simulate certain, like progress and sort of the, making sure that the balancing works. And of course, a lot of manual work on the balance side of things is continuously adjusting that. But I think the game is getting so complex that it's very difficult to keep in just one person's head, so that we have to automatize a lot of the routines and see how things work. So, but I think those, again, sort of a very important aspects that, mastering, because, you have to understand, coming back to the metrics or analytics of the game, that what are the sort of progression times, and, what are the features that people are actually using, and how much, and how does that sort of link to the overall performance of that, let's say, particular player. Very, very complicated stuff, but important stuff.
Sorry, just to follow on from that. When you're doing this testing, how much do you think about changing the game live? So say now, if you wanted to change the speed of progression, for example, on that, is that something you're able to do once the game's out live, or? Yeah,
absolutely. So basically everything is parameterized, so you can pretty much change things and sort of do tweaks and take features off. But so far we haven't needed that. With the original, like blueprint has worked quite nicely. It's been more like tweaking around that so far. But we'll be adding more game modes. Like we introduced something called Alliance Wars a couple of months ago, and was super well received by the players. But I think the really important thing about this is that you have to have a really deep dialogue with your top players, but also the whole community. And we have super active forum sites, and we do listen to the players. And
you talked a little bit about wanting to go into Asia, but you said that there was some issues you're having. Could you expand a little bit more about that? What are some of the issues you're finding when you're entering into Asia?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not issues, but the matter of the fact is that almost none of the Western developers have really made any big time. And of course, the markets are inherently very different. So especially in the mid-core segments, which are super popular in Korea and China and in Japan. So if you compare the mechanics and how the games work, they are actually quite different. They are much more aggressive in terms of monetization, brutal at sometimes. That you don't really allow, there's no free to play almost in those games, and sometimes the aesthetics that what are the kind of things that you have to change in the game so that it doesn't feel too Western or too alienated. So those are there's a lot of consideration, and in China, if you ask 10 people, you will have 100 opinions. So it's very difficult to decide who do you actually trust, and so but it's the whole complication of setting up servers inside the Chinese firewalls, obtaining government, operating licenses, making sure that you actually sometimes get your money out of China, minor details like that. But there's a lot of it's quite complicated. Japan and Korea, from a technical point of view, you don't have those issues, but from a cultural point of view, you have a lot of issues, and the marketing budgets, like importance of television. If you really want to go to the top, you have to be in TV, and that's a big sort of investment level all of a sudden.
You talked about building your analytics system from the scratch. And if we're talking about analytics system, we have a number of systems like install tracking, SO, store intelligence, support, besides in-game analytics. And essentially, it could be considered that it is not a core competence for a game dev company. So have you considered different analytics solutions and found them not up to your standards, or are you using some mix of your internal tools and external tools?
Yeah, very good question. So obviously in the early days we had to use external systems because we didn't have the time or the bandwidth. And actually it's funny, when we were building Empire's Puzzles, we probably even had less time. But I think the big insight for us was that we tested a couple of platforms, external ones, and they were either too cumbersome or they were not reliable. And our sort of maybe crazy belief at that time was that this is such an important area of the business that if we have to 100% rely, and we have to be able to tweak it in a matter of hours, not weeks or months, to add a new feature, that if we need something to, and now we're in a position that we can literally deploy a new sort of a report or analysis in a matter of hours. And we are using only internal tools, which makes us very special. But I see that, and we had the notion of that it's not the core competence. But I suppose we were a bit lucky because Dean asked about our background. So back in the Habbo days, some of the guys had already developed these kinds of systems. So we had like in-house capabilities. And we were thinking that because they would have to be involved in all kinds of integrations, for many hours. But they literally created a core system pretty quickly. So, but it comes back to the quality of the team and what they. But if you don't have people who haven't done it, I don't recommend doing it.
Well, thank you very much, Timo and Dean. Big round of applause for these guys.